Location, location, and location. If you were to go to any real estate agent and ask, what are the top 3 things that I should consider when purchasing a home? That's what they would tell you. You can forgive a lot of things in the home itself, but not the location. This image on your screen is from the movie The Patriot. It's a representation of a militia hideout that was used during the Revolution way out in the middle of the swamps of South Carolina. The reason it was successful, its location, where you are. And historically, if you have to think about it, if you were going to resist a tyrannical government during the Revolution, would you have stayed in England and tried to overthrow the crown? No. Travel to another land like America. Okay, that's a good move. But would you have stayed in Boston or in Charleston? No. These guys had to move way out in the middle of nowhere. And even though the suffering must have been immeasurable, because at this time, I don't think they even knew to boil water to make it clean. Now, some are probably asking, minute and 15 seconds in, what does this have to do with anything, Florida Maquis? Well, during that story, this character, Benjamin Martin, did not initially think it was a good idea to go to war with England. He gave all sorts of good reasons when he stood up and said, look, you can complain about taxation without representation all you want, but we could put an elected legislature in charge here, and they could trample our rights just as easy as that king could. You see, nobody's going back and watching the show and going, yeah, that's exactly what happened. He was exactly right. Because what do we have going on in this country right now? An elected legislature trampling our rights. What changed Benjamin Martin's mind, though? It was a personal event, that's right. You see, they came and his son didn't agree with him, so his son was a spy, and the dragoons got wind of it, and they came and picked him up, and in the process killed another son, and of course, we know the story. This guy basically lost his shit, and went even so far, ironically, as to enlist the help of another king, the King of France, in attempting to topple the King of England. Now, there's a bit of a logic argument there, beholden to one king because you don't like the other. But what if I told you we are seeing that exact same paradigm happening right before our eyes with this particular character? Now, I know there's a lot of people out there who have strong feelings about Megyn Kelly. She was one of those kind of faux, middle-of-the-road conservatives over at Fox News way back in the 2000s and the 90s that everybody tuned into because she was pretty. And that was pretty much about it. Now, she was a smart woman. She was Megyn Kendall. She was a lawyer. She did all this kind of stuff. And she has her own podcast now. Well, after the whole 2016 thing, she wasn't a giant fan of what went on with Mr. Trump and all that, but she never really ever joined the chorus of all of those women that decided to become liberals and go to CNN. She went her own way. She's got 2 boys at home. And she's had this in the last, I'd say, month or 2. Epiphany about how God created her. That God created man, and that God created women, and that they are both unique and special and worthy of respect in their own right, and she has lost her shit a couple of times on her podcast talking about stopping this trans nonsense. And it's an amazing thing to see the shift, because literally it's almost coming out of her mouth that it's biblical. I think she's had this moment with God where she's realized that I am a woman and I have worth just how God created me, and nobody can be me, regardless of the face paint or the dresses or the surgeries or anything else. It's really an incredible thing to see. Now, I can't really show the clips here because it would probably get me demonetized, but we're going to talk about it over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel for sure, because I want you guys to hear it if you don't have access to it. She's on Instagram and she's on YouTube and she's got millions of subscribers. But what she is saying is resonating. She's had this personal experience where before it was all theoretical about conservative versus liberal or, progressive movement. Being that she spent most of her time in Manhattan, she probably had a lot of liberal, Democrat, progressive friends that she's now having this moment to look at and go, who are you people? How can you possibly believe this? So, anyway, I just wanted to share that. Florida Maquis Patreon channel, real quick, $1 per month, even less if you sign up for an entire year. As always, absolutely no risk to you, fully refundable first 90 days. We also have a $5 level by request. We're going to be putting up a couple of new videos over the weekend here, over the Memorial Day weekend, that I think a lot of people are going to be interested in seeing. Because it is an incredible thing to absolutely witness somebody have that moment of change right in front of their eyes. Now, in today's video here, how many people would agree with this statement? How many people, if they were driving right now, would be honking the horn? Honk if you hate the IRS. Now, a lot of people believe that that was a good reason to vote for the last president. Not the current one, but the one before this, Trump. What if I told you that he told you a lot of things about what he believed about the IRS, but then when he got out of office and was on his way out of office, knowing he was going out of office, that he cut a deal? Not with the IRS, but one of those quid pro quo deals. And it has to do with this default thing. Nobody is talking about this, and I think people should. What's going on with the financing of our government right now is a Ponzi scheme. What is a Ponzi scheme? A lot of people think they know what it is. Let's just clear the air. It's where a guy, a schemer, wants to make a bunch of money. So he goes to a couple of people and says, give me X amount of money now. Come back to me in a month and I'll pay you a return plus a fee. I'll deduct a fee, but you'll get a return. You'll make more money. He doesn't actually invest the money. What he then does is he goes to the third level investors. And he gets their money. He gets money from even more people. And then he uses that money to pay these people. Now, how's he going to pay these people? Well, he goes to even more people. And then he takes their money and he gives it to them. That is exactly what is going on with the debt. Right now, the U.S. government, and you have to think about that, the U.S. government, having already collected taxes from our great-grandparents and our grandparents and our parents, that money they've collected to run the government. They didn't invest it, they squandered it, they threw it away, and they made promises to those people. Well, where are they getting the money to pay Social Security to our great-grandparents, grandparents, parents? They have to now borrow money. Who are they borrowing it from? The new investors, our grandchildren, great-grandchildren in the future. That's where they're getting the money. That's what they're talking about, raising the debt ceiling. It is a Ponzi scheme at this point. By definition. Joe Blue wants to make a quick buck. Blue tells Red that if Red gives Blue $10, Blue will make it into $20, but he'll deduct $2 for a commission. So, okay, over a certain period of time. So he takes Blue's money. Blue takes Red's money, pardon me. Blue then goes to Mr. Orange and Mr. Green and offers them the same deal. And they each give him $10. So he hasn't invested the initial $10. And now he's got $10 and $10. So then Red comes back and says, okay, where's my 18? Well, he's given these guys the same deal, $2 fees each. So he takes their money and then pays him. And then keeps it going. And then he uses these other people to say, hey, well, look, I'm paying you. You go get other people for me. And they'll get more people and more people and more people to go pay money. And the new money pays after old. And here's the real story that they're not telling you. They can default and still pay some people, but not others. That's what's really going on. A lot of people still think this is government shutdown, and it's not. Government shutdown. A shutdown occurs when Congress doesn't approve legislation so that the government can keep spending money to remain open. What's going on now is a default occurs if the government exceeds its legal borrowing limit, that the government is even borrowing money. It's even borrowing money to have to pay Social Security and pay for all these things that they legislated into being, makes our government right now, by legal definition, a Ponzi scheme. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering about what I had said about Mr. Trump. Governor DeSantis said in an interview with Dana Loesch that he would completely, 100% defund the IRS. He would get rid of it. If Congress brought him legislation, he can't do it, of course, just unilaterally, president or governor or anything else. But he said to Dana Loesch he would 100%, and I'll give you this link, it's on YouTube, Dana Loesch, that he would do this. Now, what if I told you the last year that Trump was in office, he actually restored funding to the IRS all the way back to 2010 levels? And here's the article. You see, this is my issue with, and a lot of people completely misconstrue my issue with Mr. Trump. When Mr. Trump says something, you choose, Trump supporter, to just believe him at his word because it sounds good. I don't. I want to make sure that when he says it, he's just not saying it to tell me what I want to hear. And in too many cases, I have seen him say ABC, XYZ thing, and then later on, when he thought nobody was looking, and he didn't think anybody was paying attention, he went back and did something completely different. And of course, he usually does these things when other stories are in the headlines. And if anybody tries to call him out on it, he sicks his attack dogs on them, just like he did Megyn Kelly, who had to walk around for a year with armed guards. But here's the story. Trump's budget seeks to increase funding for the Internal Revenue Service. Now, this is February 12, 2020. What other story was in the news February 12, 2020? Of course, the CV, the sniffles, the 2020 sniffles. Staff would grow by a net 1,700 positions from 2020 levels if the $400 million in cap adjustments to exceed spending levels in the 2019 budget agreement is included. Now here's the part that's going to blow your mind. Let me read this real quick. On Monday, the White House sent Congress a $4.8 trillion budget request for fiscal 2021 that would increase military spending by 0.3% and decrease non-defense spending by 5%. For the Internal Revenue Service, the plan proposes $12 billion, which is about a 4% increase in the money 2020, yet would decrease initial staff levels by 1,183 full-time employees. Now, this is what Trump trumpeted to everybody. However, with the $400 million in cap adjustments, there would be a net increase of 1,700 positions from fiscal 2020 levels. Cap adjustments are spending that is allowed above the limits in the 2019 budget because of their potential to generate revenue. That means extort money for the Ponzi scheme from Americans. Whenever you hear generate revenue for the government, extort money at the point of a gun to continue to finance the Ponzi scheme that is the U.S. government. You see, when you hear more efficient government, they're just better at extorting money. I will give you this link and you can read it. Now, ready to have your mind blown? Who was president in 2010? Barack Obama. That's right. Barack Obama, under him, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, and yes, even though Trump took over in 17, this budget, as we saw above, the budget for 2017, what came from the year before. So continue to drop, and then all of a sudden, 2018, Trump's now president, 2019, look at this. Employees start to go up. And he wanted to restore it all the way back to here. Now, there's a reason. There's a reason he wanted to do that. What's the reason? Well, real simple. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. I will make sure that our budget gives you a bunch of money, IRS. You leave me alone, you go after my enemies. And they do. And that's how this works. Like I said, they are going to pick and choose. You see, this idea of the default being where government pays nobody anything is not true. It's something called debt prioritization. How many of you knew that even in a debt default that China would still get paid? What the U.S. owes China would still get paid even though no Social Security checks would be going out. And if there were Social Security checks going out, they would be going out in a very weird priority. Newsflash, it wouldn't be the poorest first. It would be a certain group of people that would probably raise hell. So, I'll leave it there. But honest to God, I know a lot of people have very strong feelings about Miss Kelly. You want to believe that Trump has changed? You want to believe that Trump is no longer the Democrat that he used to be years and years ago, even though he's given millions to Democrats and now is kind of showing his Democrat roots. If people can change, why can't she? I find it odd and ironic that she visits Florida multiple times and then all of a sudden is starting to come back with a little bit of a different take on what conservatism really means. And how it's perfectly fine to be a woman, and it's perfectly fine to be a man. Nobody was born into the wrong body. Nobody has ever been born into the wrong body. Do you notice they never talk about that like they used to? You see, that was the original story, wasn't it? What do you mean you were born into the wrong body? You mean you have a spirit? I mean, you're a spirit, and you're this, but then your body is that. You see, they can't acknowledge that. See, they had to quiet that. Who remembers when they started talking about that in those terms and somebody had to shut them up and say, hey, wait a minute. That means you would have to acknowledge that there's a spirit and a soul and a body. You can't say that. You have to basically just say that that some chemical mix-up has occurred. And you see, they always have to catch themselves. They always have to catch themselves. So well done, Miss. I'm going to call it out whenever I see it. When I see truth and I see somebody getting real close to quoting Scripture without actually quoting Scripture, I can tell that God's working on them. This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman. Genesis 2:23. I'll leave it there. Thank you, everyone who has joined us here at the Florida Maquis Patriot channel. And also over at, here at the YouTube channel, and then, of course, over at the Patreon channel. All levels. God bless every one of you. Have a wonderful celebratory weekend. Like, share, subscribe, and we will see you guys next time.